Greetings, beloved of Christ. It is my hope and prayer that you are well. To quote the third epistle of John, chapter 1, verse 2, beloved, I pray that in every way you may prosper and enjoy good health, as your soul also prospers. These last couple of weeks have been different and difficult from any experience that we have had. Our schedules have been disrupted. Our plans are no longer sure. The things that we said we would do, or we thought we would be doing at this time, are not what we are doing indeed. On a Sunday morning, we are listening to services from home. And that is different. And now, if we have distilled our deepest desire, and it is that our loved ones and ourselves would remain healthy, that we would enjoy good health, and that our souls would prosper. These are strange times indeed. A friend of mine from Mombasa, Nes, said, God has called a meeting, and we all need to sit down and listen to what he has to say. Yes, even as a Christian leader, I have spent much more time trying to hear what God is saying to me in this time. I'm spending a lot of time talking to God, alone, with my family, with friends, with some of you members of St. Chrysostom, as we have spoken on the phone, we have prayed with one another online. I've prayed in my head, I've prayed out loud, I've prayed sitting, prayed standing, walking around, as many of you have. We spent a lot of time in deliberate prayer. And today I want to examine a prayer that is part of the readings that we have this morning. If you're listening with a friend, with family, or alone, please hit the pause button and read the following scriptures. Do you have a pen? Psalm 86. Psalm 86. Jeremiah 31, 27 to 37. Jeremiah 31, 27 to 37. John 12, 20 to 33. John 12, 20 to 33. Let me say that again. Psalms 86, Jeremiah 31, 27 to 37, John 12, 20 to 33. According to our lectionary, these are the readings for today. And so if you have time later on, you can spend time just reading them and listening to what God has to say. But today we are focusing on Psalm 86. Psalm 86. The writer of this psalm is said to have been David. It's called a prayer of David. David, as well as other psalm writers, such as the descendants of Korah, even Moses wrote a psalm, have been able to take in words and bring our emotions and put our emotions into words. Emotions that are common to us, such as joy and sorrow, such as guilt, fear, anger, excitement, contentment, even anxiety. When we read these psalms, we feel like the psalmist understood what we are going through. That they're speaking, they feel us where we are. This Psalm of David is an urgent plea in a time of crisis. David seemed both fearful and anxious, feelings that we have become familiar with in this season. And so we see David pleading. This is what he's saying to God: hear me, guard my life, save me, have mercy, bring joy, listen to my cry, teach me, show yourself strong, give me a sign for all to see. David is very honest with his need. And then David goes on and reminds God, I need your help. I'm devoted to you. I serve you. I trust in you. I give myself to you. In doing this, I don't think David is trying to blow his own trumpet. He's just trying to show just how much he depends upon God. He's reminding God, I have no one else but you. And this is important because this is true. We have no one else but God. As we plead for ourselves, for our families, for this nation and for the nations around the world, we have no one else but God. If he does not save us, then no one else can. So David pleads his case. But the other component of this prayer is to remind ourselves of the character of God. The character of a person often guides us on how we expect that person to respond to us. I'll tell you a story about a friend of mine. She once came up to me and asked me, do I have the word sucker written on my forehead? And I said, why? Because she says that as soon as I step out that door, there are people who are asking me for money for food, money for rent, money for medicine. And I think some of them are trying to take advantage of me. And I told her, but you have such a kind and compassionate heart. And they know that when they come to you, you always respond to them with compassion. You always do. And that's why they come to you. When we remind ourselves of the nature of God, then we find hope that he will respond positively to our prayers. And what do we learn about the nature of God from Psalm 86? That God is forgiving, that God is loving, that God answers prayer, that God is compassionate, that God is gracious, that God is slow to anger. Isn't that such a relief? That God is slow to anger, that he's abounding in love and faithful. In the Jeremiah text, we also see God as almighty. It is he who is in charge of the destiny of nations. Jeremiah also reminds us that God is just and that he will not judge people for the sins of others, but that each person should look to their own, seeking to live right with God, repenting of their own sins. But it will no longer be said that the fathers have eaten sour grapes and the children's teeth are set on edge. For both of these people, it is their knowledge of God that leads them to respond to him as they do. We read that Jeremiah devoted his life preaching the word of God. The ministry of Jeremiah spanned many years, and there were many difficult years. From the time of Josiah, who had a mini revival in Judah, to the time of exile to Babylon. And Jeremiah never gave up. He continued to preach the word of God. In this psalm, we read about how David responds, and indeed in his entire life. As we read the stories about David, we see how David responded to God. David affirms his commitment to God and to the revealed character of God. And so he says, I rely on your faithfulness. I fear your name. I praise you. I will glorify you forever. What a commitment. I will glorify you forever. David continues this prayer, pleading with God to show himself strong. David knew that God would not leave the circumstance as it was. Yes, it was difficult. Yes, he was in great fear, but he was dependent on God. And so he says, show yourself strong. Come through for me. David asks God to give him a sign. And he finishes by saying, O Lord, hear and comfort me. O Lord, hear and comfort me. Isn't that our prayer today? O Lord, hear and comfort us. O Lord, show yourself strong on our behalf. These are strange times and challenging times indeed. The future is lived day by day. day by day. Indeed, it almost feels like we live from one news cast to another, from one briefing to the next. We have no control over the future. We never did. But sometimes we thought that we could plan, and our plans would come to fruition. And it's easy for us to give into fear. David was anxious and fearful about violent men. Right now, our concern is this pandemic, the COVID-19. It is a virus that has led to sickness and death for many. It has shut down economies. The world indeed has shut down. And our world, as we know it, is different from anything we have seen. But as David prayed to God, let us also pray together in faith that God will hear us and show himself strong on our own behalf, on behalf of our families, on behalf of this nation, and indeed in the entire world. Let us pray. Like David prayed, we want to ask you, Lord, that you bend your ear and listen to us. That, Father, that you would hear us and that you would rescue us, O God. That, Father, that you would strengthen and encourage us, O God. That in this season of an uncertain future, that, O God, you would show yourself strong on our behalf. We want to pray for this nation, O God, and ask, Father, that you would protect us, O Lord. We pray for wisdom for the leaders of this nation, O God, and ask that even as they make determinations and seek direction, O Lord, that, Father, that you would give them understanding so that they would know what to do, that which is right. I want to pray for each and every individual who is sick in hospital. Some of them, it is from the COVID virus. We have been told that we have 38 people who are positive. We pray, Lord, that for each one of them, oh God, you would show yourself strong and that you would give them healing. And there are others who are sick in hospital from other illnesses, but Father, that you would show yourself strong for them, oh God, that you would speak to them even in the hospital bed. We want to pray, oh God, for the nations around the world that are grappling with this pandemic. Some of them are in a very tight situation. We pray for Italy, oh Lord. We pray for Spain. We pray for the United States. We pray for the UK. We pray for the nations of Africa, where we know that we may not have the resources that some of the other nations have. And ask, Lord, that you would show yourself strong on our behalf. We also pray, Lord, that you would comfort us. And as you comfort us, that you would hear us, O Lord. And that we would hear you speak to us. We thank you and we bless you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.